President Cyril Ramaphosa says the Constitutional Court has over the years proved its ability to ensure that our democracy is preserved. He was delivering a keynote address at the Constitutional Court's 30th anniversary celebrations in Johannesburg. We go now to the Constitution Hill there, where my colleague Michelle Craig joins us live for more on this. Michelle, good afternoon to you. Big celebrations there. What are people saying?
And in fact, Stephen, good afternoon. Those celebrations and commemorations are still taking place in the hall there behind us. There's still a number of speakers at the podium. You will know that we have representation here today from not only across the continent, chief justices from across the continent, but indeed from around the world. It's really an incredible gathering of the best legal minds in the country, particularly in our democratic history, those founding fathers of the Constitutional Court now 30 years ago. So let's bring in the Justice Minister, who has also had the privilege, Mmamoloko Kubayi, of introducing the President today. And I heard you say that, reflecting on our democracy, you were actually not able to vote in 1994 because you were not of age. I admit I wasn't either. But your point was we live in a country of possibility.
Yes. No, definitely. I was reflecting that as we celebrate this 30 years, we've got to look, because sometimes we go for the negative. We don't see what it has been, that you had two women, the Chief Justice, first Chief Justice, female Chief Justice, Justice Maya, leading this milestone of 30 years. And next to her is a young woman, a teenager at that time, when this court was established, who would have been a teenager in this country as a black young girl. And today, also leading in terms of supporting the judiciary in the celebration. So it does tell a story about where we come from and where the journey that we have traveled. Quite significant. If you look at the speech when she spoke about the number of female judges that today sits in the Constitutional Court compared to the first cohort, it tells you a journey that we have traveled. And even the justice judiciary, in terms of the judges, as far as when you go to magistrates, actually, you find more than 50% are women. So it's the journey that we have traveled of transformation, but also the issues around the landmark cases that have been here. Because when the women are there sitting, we do believe that if women come in front of them as well, the issues, they understand from their own background. So your own experiences tell you on what needs to be done. And that's not for them to be biased, but to understand the reality, because you don't want judges that are out of touch with the reality, what is happening in communities. And that's why when you listen to her, she spoke about social issues. Yeah. She spoke about access to say, yes, we're celebrating this milestone. We would have made this judgment. But there are many women who are still saying we still lack the basic human rights that we need to be able to get in terms of access to housing, access to healthcare, all those things that we've been able to achieve. Reproductive health that has been achieved is those influences. So it's a good celebration, it's a good milestone, but we are telling our story as South Africa to the world.
And I was very heartened to hear the President not only try to gloss over the history of the Constitutional Court or his administration, but also admitting to where we are falling short. He talked about Irene Grootboom, who was in the Constitutional Court, and her right to housing was validated by the Constitutional Court, but she died 8 years later without that right being realized.
Yes, I think the President highlighted even the challenges that exist. Even, I don't know if you heard where he spoke about even the government having to implement those judgments, because he acknowledged that some of the areas, there are weaknesses. So that when we have these judgments, are just not things which are on paper, but we as the executive take initiative and ensure that we comply with the judges' judgments, but we also ensure that we are able to live to the spirit that this Constitution and the court is about.
And we know the President also talked about the court and how the Constitutional Court has gone up against the executive, particularly around the separation of powers principle. And the Constitutional Court stood firm, he says. It withstood a lot of pressure.
Definitely, which is what as well we always talk about, that when we talk about the separation of power, It's because, and this is why we must thank our forebears. I know a lot of South Africans says what is the real life or the real experiences versus what the Constitution says, and the Chief Justice also spoke to that, and the President spoke to that, that you find that there are judgments that are helping. And because of that check and balance, if we didn't have check and balance, perhaps we would have had the executive that runs amok without having the judiciary have to bring it back. And the importance is to be able to acknowledge that. But one of the issues that the President, as we talk about how the Constitutional Court has been able to stand firm, but also the judiciary, he spoke about the initiative in ensuring that the judiciary finds its full independence. Because currently they are independent as the court, but when you look at the administration, the people who are recruited, the Office of the Chief Justice, for example, it's a department, but its executive authority is a minister. So the recruitment is done through the minister, authorization must be done. Their allocation of budget goes through the minister, which shouldn't be, because the Constitution did not envisage that. The Constitution wants to see a judiciary-led judiciary. So, and that's what he committed to. So in that work, we have started working, we've been working together with Chief Justice and the team. We've got a joint team. We've promised the President that within 2 months after the meeting, within this month, we actually looking at the dates to meet to look at the first reports. First as well is that I said to the team, I want a transitional mechanism that will put in place in real time, showcasing, because one of the things that they've raised with us is that how do we trust that we'll do it this time? It has been years that we spoke about this thing. When the Office of the Chief Justice was established, it was phase 1 in 2012, and since then, phase 2 and phase 3 has not been seen. So what we have committed with timeframes is that the first 2 months, after 2 months, we'll present what are the proposals in terms of a transitional method. 2, in terms of long-term amendments of legislation with timeframes. We'll take that to the judiciary and take that to the head of state into cabinet for approval. And that's what the President reaffirmed in standing here. And I can tell you that the work is underway. We have started with the transitional process.
So independence in every sense of the word. So, I mean, when we talk about the judiciary, Minister, and I heard this question being put to the President, and I don't think he was keen to answer it, not in this setting where he said it was quite celebratory. But the judiciary cannot be separated from the NPA. What do you have to say to us? There have been talks about an inquiry that might be on the cards. Action SA yesterday was protesting outside your offices, wanting Shamila Batohi to be removed with immediate effect. What's your comment on this?
Look, Action SA, let me start with Action SA. They wrote to me, and after I received the letter, within a day, I reached out for a meeting. Set up a meeting, and then Honorable Trollipi, then, because my office tried, send him emails, WhatsApps and everything, until then when they tried again, and then he said, no, he's in the Eastern Cape. And the reason why I wanted to have a meeting is that when I looked at what they are listing as reasons to fire the NDPP are not what would be valid in law. Because you've got to understand what are the roles and responsibility of the NDPP. And I wanted to understand from their context so that we have a conversation. They take me through, explain in how context, what is the context that they are linking those things to the NDPP. And in that would have been, because where I'm sitting, there isn't a need for an inquiry. I can say that. And I say this because there's importance for us to note. You know, I acknowledge the public outcry. That people, when they see a case like Omotoso case, that is lost. But again, take the Estina Dare. That case was lost, they appealed it, they won it. So are we going to act on the basis of when a case is lost, then you want to jump? When they appeal it, they win. Are we going to, and then when they lose it, we fire them. When they win the appeal, are we going to rehire them? Because you can't work like that. So we've got to be able to function in a system. And the other issue I want to appeal to the public.
Before you say, Minister, if we're going to appeal a case on the basis, like Amotosha, for example, if we're going to appeal on the basis that, I mean, the judge herself in that judgment had some scathing things to say about the prosecution. When you're wasting court time, if you're going to appeal and then win, even if you do win, but you're still having to appeal bad work.
The team is, and I think let's not go, because they are appealing. Yeah. And I think in the appeal, which is near, they will go into the details. There are things that they've been able to share, to say these are the concerns they have, which is something that I want to hear them fought in the court of law, and we deal with it. For example, if you look at the Estina case as well, When you listen to that, we shouldn't have reached there. So it's not every time where it is the fault of the NPA. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I'm one for accountability, and I will not shield the NDPP if she has to fall because of not doing her work. But let's be fair. And the other issue I want to appeal is that sometimes in the quest of doing certain things, we almost like develop the whole organization. We are taking the entire organization. For example, you have prosecutors in magistrate courts, you have prosecutors in all courts, daily fighting for cases and winning those cases. I mean, one young woman approached me in Limpopo to say, Minister, I'm a prosecutor in a magistrate court. I can give you. I win almost all my cases. If I have lost one or two, in the entirety, my career is. And when I listen to people saying to us that we are corrupt, we are incompetent, I feel like I don't belong here. I shouldn't serve the state. It says, if I leave and become an advocate, I will make more money out there. We're here because we want to serve. And this is my appeal. To recruit a prosecutor is not easy. And to keep them with experience is not, it's even more difficult. And that's why where we have faults, let's deal with where the faults are. Where there are individuals who are doing wrong, let's deal with them. But let's not demoralize a whole cohort that daily wakes up in difficult conditions, some of them being threatened, by the way. You'd understand not very long, we had a prosecutor who was killed. Under difficult conditions, they are there to fight for justice. Let's separate issues. Let's not say the whole NPA must. And that's why even myself, I said, when NDPP said to me, when I had the interview about infiltration, I jumped. I didn't even waste 24 hours. I met with her within less than 24 hours. I said, can you come and tell me what is happening? I said, no. Then he said, no, it's a wrong choice of word, which I then accepted. But the issue is that they are individuals. And you would note, last week, we had a prosecutor who's appearing before court, charged. So it's those things that will have individuals, like anywhere, either in police, where they do something wrong, like in society, we will take action. And those are what we want to deal with.
All right, Justice Minister, thanks very much indeed for your time this afternoon. Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi there, Stephen, talking to us about a whole range of issues, including, of course, where we are at today, the 30th anniversary of the Constitutional Court.